Okay.
I'm looking at my screen here.
Okay.
And I don't see it yet, but there's a little
There's a
bit of
little
delay.
bit of a delay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Got it. I can see you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking at my phone here, and it's
Got
showing.
couple minutes yet here.
It is broadcasting.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting some people on the line already. Looks like we're already at 56 people now that are on the call here. So we'll wait until I got a couple more minutes until it'll be 7:30 Central Time. So we'll go ahead and get started in just a couple minutes or so. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type my name, email address, and office telephone number into the comments here. There'll be some times during the presentation where I'm going to refer to being able to reach out to me if you have questions or anything. So I'm just going to type that into the comments really quick right now.
I can do that if you want.
Okay, yeah, Dale, if you want to do that, that'd be fine.
What's your last four digits?
2244.
2244.
Yep.
Email is just J Upgren, right?
Jim Upgren, all one word.
Yeah,
all
right.
one word. Yep.
Okay. I'll repeat this
Okay.
during the show here.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we'll get started here. My name is Jim Upgren. I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of School Approval and Opportunity with the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. I'm going to visit with everyone today regarding the academic and CTE scholarship, commonly referred to as the state scholarship. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Looks like we're up to 123 viewers so far. That is excellent. I hope that everybody's doing well, no matter what corner of the state that you're from. We're looking forward to visiting with people all over this great state tonight to visit about the scholarship. A few starting points that I want to mention here. Our main purpose tonight is to inform students and parents of the requirements and potential uses for the scholarship money. We're going to go over common reasons why students think that they may qualify and end up not qualifying. We'll go through all that in some detail. I'm going to go over a lot of key information, but I also want this to be informal. We welcome and encourage questions throughout the presentation. If you have questions, type them into the comment box, and we will answer them as we go tonight. I know that we're technically scheduled to go until 8:30 tonight, but I will stay on the line beyond 8:30 if needed to answer all questions. I will not go off of the line tonight until all of the questions have been answered. A couple disclaimers I want to give before we get started here. The first, as everybody probably knows who's done a Facebook Live before, if you do type your question into the comment window, people will be able to see your name. So I don't know if that's a big deal to people or not, but I did want to just make sure that we mention that just so that everybody is well aware. If you do type a question into the comments, names will be visible. So just a little bit about that. The other thing I want to mention is that in a presentation like this, there's going to be no way that I'll be able to cover every single possible scenario, individual student scenario that might happen. So want to make sure that we mention that just because a particular scenario might not be mentioned tonight, a person can't come back later and say, well, you didn't cover this particular scenario that either myself or my son or daughter encountered dealing with the scholarship. So if you end up not qualifying for the scholarship, we still have to go by what the requirements are. So again, we're going to do the very best we can we're going to cover all the requirements, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Now, if your question is about the scholarship requirements itself, absolutely go ahead and type them into the comments. If your question is more about your specific situation, or in the case of parents, the specific situation of your son or daughter, then it would be more appropriate for you to call or email me sometime during the workday, and I'd be more than happy to help answer that specific individual question. The scholarship requirements, they're written into state law. For those that are familiar with the Century Code, it's 15.1-21, sections 2.4 through 2.9. Not that you need to know that particular detail, but the main point that I like to really cover with that is that since the requirements are written into state law, the legislators are the ones who determine the requirements, and so we do have to make sure that we stick to them. A question from Crystal Hayden here. Can you send us a recording? I don't know that we'll be able to send a recording, but this will be, we can send a recording. Okay, perfect. So if you'd like a recording, Crystal or anybody else that's out there, just shoot me an email, and I'll visit with Dale Wetzel, who is, by the way, with us right here too, and I want to thank Dale for his help in getting everything set up from a technical standpoint. So anyways, yep, it sounds like we can definitely do that. Another thing that we're able to get out, and I see that that Dale typed this into the chat, is we have a scholarship brochure. During most years, this would be something that when I go out to schools, I'm able to pass out to students and parents and counselors and staff and whoever else might be present. Obviously, have not done very many in-person, face-to-face presentations this year, but we still do have our brochure. So if you would like a copy of the brochure, call me or email me, and I will email you a copy of it, and you can make as many copies as you'd like. All of the requirements that we'll talk about tonight are also in that brochure. So let's talk first about what are the academic and career and technical education scholarships. The academic and CTE scholarship, it's a $1,500 a year, $6,000 max total scholarship. And all students who meet every single requirement that is listed is guaranteed to get a scholarship. So it's not really a competitive scholarship as far as you're not competing against other students. It's really you competing with the actual requirements themselves. Okay? So, for example, if your son or daughter, we have the list of requirements, meets every single requirement, they're going to get a scholarship. But if they miss even one of the requirements, then they don't. Okay? A couple other things that I want to point out here. Number one, students have to be North Dakota residents. We'll talk about that in a little more detail in just a little bit. And then students also have to attend a North Dakota college or university in order to use the scholarship money. Ruthie asked a question, which I believe was answered in the chat, but I'll just address it really quick here too. Do all juniors take the ACT? Students, the state pays for every student to take it the first time. And then after that, if students want to retake it, then they have to do that on their own. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between the academic and the career and tech ed scholarship. A lot of times, this will be referred to as the state scholarship. And technically in the law, these are actually written out as two different scholarships. The academic and the career and tech ed, each of them has their own set of requirements. Some of them are common requirements, others are a little bit different. Really the main difference here is going to be the way that the scholarship is earned. Both of these scholarships are worth the same amount of money. Both of these scholarships can be used at the same colleges and universities. The main difference is going to be the courses that are taken and the different testing that's required. Okay? One thing I always want to point out too is that a student can earn one or the other, but they cannot earn both. So a student, we'll usually have between 100 or 200 students maybe each year statewide that do meet the requirements for the scholarship, but they can only get one or the other. Ruthie makes a good point there. So students do have the option to take the Workkeys instead of taking the ACT during the junior year if they so choose. A lot of the students will choose the ACT. They do have the option to take the Workkeys. So Ruthie, that is absolutely correct. Joy asked the question: is the brochure on the DPI website? It is currently not. It is currently not on the DPI website due to some ADA compliance issues. But again, if you're interested in the brochure, we're happy to go ahead and get those out to you. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at some general qualifications about the scholarship. We're going to talk about these in very general terms to start with, and then we'll go into these in a little bit more detail in just a second. Okay? First of all, you have to have a high school grade point average of 3.0 or higher, an ACT score of 24 or higher, or in the case of the CTE scholarship, a Workkeys score of 5 or higher. We also take into account the courses that are taken in high school. And one thing I want to point out here is that the number one reason that a student thinks they qualify and ends up not qualifying is that they were missing some courses that they needed to have. We're going to go into detail with all the courses during the course of the presentation here. Okay, so it's very important for students to start planning even in 9th and 10th grade regarding getting signed up for the correct scholarship classes. Okay, Rebecca asked a question here: is there an age cap for these scholarships? Okay, so with the scholarship, students will apply for the scholarship at the end of their senior year. We go through their transcripts at the end of the senior year. Students have to have all testing and coursework completed by the time they graduate. And then as far as being able to use the scholarship, once they've been awarded the scholarship at the end of their senior year, students have up to 6 years to use the scholarship money. They can use $1,500 per year for a max total of 4 years. So let's say, for example, a student takes a year off or they leave the state for school and come back. Essentially, they can use that up until they're basically 24 years old, assuming that they graduate high school when they're 18. Okay, so they get $6,000 worth of money. They get $6,000 worth of money that can be used over the course of during 6 years, but it's good for 8 semesters. Okay. Let's take a look at some common reasons why students that think they qualify end up not qualifying. Okay, so Greg has a question here. So the student must attend. Very good question. If a student wants to, they live in Fargo, want to go to school at MSUM, they would not be eligible because MSUM, even though it is very, very close to our state boundary, and you can practically see the state of North Dakota from the campus, no, the student cannot use the state scholarship at Moorhead State. That is a very good question, Greg. Thank you for asking that. So as far as common reasons why some students think they don't qualify, students have to take 2 credits of CTE from the same coordinated plan of study, which we'll go into in a little bit of detail here. And so that's going to be one reason why a student might not qualify, is that they think they have those classes in, but they don't. So we're going to go over that. Another common reason here is going to be that they didn't take enough CTE classes when they're in school if they're going for the CTE scholarship. Another common reason why a student might not qualify is that they thought that art, music, and PE counted as CTE classes, which they don't. Another one could be that if their ACT is below 24 and they're going for the Career and Tech Ed scholarship, they maybe didn't get the Workkeys taken while they were in school. Okay? And another one might be that they didn't get the ACT done before they graduated. Kristen asked a question here: if a student is a North Dakota resident but attends, that's another very good question. Yes, if a student lives in North Dakota and they attend either a private or public school in another state, let's say, for example, they live in Fargo and they go to Park Christian Academy over in Moorhead, absolutely they can get the scholarship. One thing to keep in mind if you're in that situation is that the school's graduation requirements might not necessarily be lined up to North Dakota's graduation requirements or North Dakota scholarship standards. So you're going to need to make sure that your kids get the correct classes if they're going to an out-of-state school. But absolutely, if they're a North Dakota resident and they live in North Dakota, but they happen to attend school across the border. Now, it has to be a situation where they are living at home in North Dakota. They travel out of state for school, like if they go from Fargo to Moorhead and then come back every single night. What they can't do is they can't be sleeping on grandma's couch 200 miles away and just coming home on the weekends. That doesn't count. It has to be a situation where they actually physically live in North Dakota. But Kristen, that's a very good question. I'm glad that you asked that. We're going to cover that in a little more detail in just a second here. We've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about how the scholarship can be used. So again, they have to attend a qualifying college or university in North Dakota. Okay? All of our four-year colleges and universities, all of our two-year colleges and universities, our private colleges such as University of Mary, University of Jamestown, Trinity Bible College, as well as all of our tribal schools. All of those schools are schools where the scholarship can be used at. Let's say you go to Bismarck State for your first year or two, and then you transfer to NDSU or UND. That's acceptable. All you got to do is let the university system know that you're switching schools. Okay, Michelle asks a very good question that I was planning on addressing, but I'll go ahead and address it right now here. Will we still be requiring the ACT score this year because of some of the not as many opportunities due to COVID? Okay. The answer to that is yes, we will still be requiring it because it is in state law. There are opportunities in the state to take the ACT. It might be a situation where you maybe have to travel a little bit further. We've had some people that have contacted our office asking where the test is taken. Our testing coordinator, her office is right next door to me. So if you're having trouble finding a place to take the ACT, we can certainly assist you in trying to find that. Okay? Okay, Ruthie's asking, tell everybody about the Workkeys. It doesn't follow century code. Well, we're going to talk about the Workkeys in a little bit as it relates to the CTE scholarship, and it is in the century code as it relates to the CTE scholarship, so I guess I'm not understanding the question. Is partial a tribal school? When we say tribal schools, we're talking about tribal colleges. Any student that attends any high school in North Dakota is eligible to go for the scholarship. So a student who graduates from partial high school absolutely can go for the scholarship if they qualify for it. And then when we say a tribal school, if they attend one of our tribal colleges, those colleges are acceptable. What are specific CTE classes? We're going to get into that a little bit, Michelle. So if you're okay with just kind of holding off on that a little bit, we will go into some detail with what some of the specific CTE classes. In general, CTE classes are going to be things like family consumer science, agriculture, business education, health careers, trade and industry, stuff like that. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about how you can find out specifically all that in just a little bit. Once again, we already talked about the scholarship can be used within 6 years of graduating high school. It must be used within 6 years of graduating from high school. Sometimes what will happen is a student who knows for sure that they're going out of state and they qualify for the scholarship, they might not fill out an application. The application itself only takes about 5 minutes to fill out. So we encourage all students that have a chance of qualifying to fill out that application, knowing that it only takes about 5 or 10 minutes to fill out, because you never know. You might leave the state for a year and then come back. And we want to make sure that as many students who do qualify get that application filled out, so that if they do come back, they're able to use that. We'll talk a little bit more about residency here. Again, students have to be a North Dakota resident, and then as long as the student is a North Dakota resident, they can graduate from any of the following types of schools. They can graduate from any high school in North Dakota. They can graduate from a public or non-public school in a bordering state if they live in North Dakota with a custodial parent. So they have to be living in North Dakota and just happen to go to school across the border. That's not going to affect very many places in the state here, mainly only schools that are fairly close to our state boundaries. Another thing is that students who are home educated, if they're doing a home education program, as long as they live in North Dakota, home educated students are eligible to apply for and receive the scholarship too. So if either you or somebody you know happens to be a home educated student, make sure that they're aware of this and they're able to pursue this as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about some of the specific scholastic requirements that are required in order to try to attain the scholarship. Now, the first requirement is going to be graduating high school with the required 22 credits. Now, the state minimum for high school graduation is 22 credits. A lot of schools, I'm going to say probably ballpark half the schools in the state, do require more than 22 credits for graduation, and that is a local decision that schools can certainly make. But for our purposes, when I'm determining who qualifies for the scholarship, I go by the minimum of 22 credits. Okay? So you have to graduate high school with the required 22 credits. You have to have a 3.0 non-weighted grade point average or higher. So what that means is if you're in a school where your school offers, maybe for some advanced courses, they offer 5 points for an A, 4 points for a B, to try and encourage students to take some more upper level classes, that has to be reconverted back down to a traditional 4.0 grade point scale. The state law specifically says it's based on a 4.0 scale, so it has to be a non-weighted grade point. Now, the other nice thing about the grade point requirement is that, in a way, the students kind of get two chances at it. If the overall grade point average is 3.0 or higher, then the student meets the GPA requirement. Let's say that the student's overall grade point is 2.8, 2.9, something like that. Then what we'll do is we'll take just the 22 specific credits. You know, they have to have their 4 Englishes, their 3 maths, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll recalculate it that way. And as long as either their overall or their 22 credit GPA is a 3.0, then the student will meet the grade point average requirement. Okay, we're going to move next to, one other requirement before we move on here. Scholastically here, students cannot have a grade lower than a C for any class that is required for the scholarship. So what that means is that if a student gets, for example, Algebra 2 is a class that's required for the scholarship. If a student gets a grade below a C in Algebra 2, they either have to retake Algebra 2 or they're not eligible for the scholarship. How about parochial schools? Does this follow the Blaine Amendment? I guess I'm not familiar with the Blaine Amendment off the top of my head. So when you say how about parochial schools, I guess I'm not sure what your question is. If you want to re-ask the question, I'll make an attempt to answer that, Ruthie. Okay. Testing requirements. We're going to go into testing next year, and we've already kind of talked about this a little bit. For the academic scholarship, a student has to receive a 24 or higher on the ACT test. So the ACT is the only test that a student can take to qualify for the academic scholarship. Now, one thing I want to point out, and I've already kind of addressed it earlier, we have received a lot of questions asking if the ACT is still going to be required this year because of COVID. And the answer to that is yes, okay? Because it's required by law. And again, you may have to travel a little bit to take the ACT if it's not offered in your area. If you contact our office, we will be happy to try to assist you in trying to find a testing location. One other thing I want to point out, that starting this year, students can use what's called an ACT Superscore to try to qualify for the scholarship. Now, how a Superscore works is, let's say a student takes the ACT more than one time. If a student takes the ACT more than once, let's say the first time they do really well in the English and the math, and then the second part they do better in the science and reading, but maybe not as well as English and math, what the Superscore will do is it will take the highest score in each of the 4 areas and basically calculate the score as if the student took it all at the same time. Now, in order for the Superscore to count, the Superscore itself has to be issued by ACT. I know that sometimes the universities will hand calculate a Superscore, or, I mean, it is possible for you to hand calculate it yourself, but the only ones that will be accepted for scholarship purposes are going to be if it comes from ACT itself. When you apply to retake your ACT, there is a portion in the application where you have to indicate that you would like a Superscore calculated. Who pays for the ACT and what is the cost? Students have that option to take it that first time their junior year in high school if they'd like to. After that, if they want to retake it, they're on their own. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact cost of the ACT. I'm my understanding is it's around $55 or so. I might be off on that by a little bit, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So if you do have any questions about the ACT Super Score, give our office a call and we'll be happy to help you out. So that's for the academic scholarship. The academic scholarship, you have to have a 24 or higher on the ACT. For the career and tech ed, the CTE scholarship, you have a couple of testing options. You can get the 24 on the ACT, that is one option, or the other option is you can take what's called the Workkeys Exam. Now the Workkeys Exam, some schools offer it themselves. Other schools, if they don't offer it, the student can go to another testing site and take the test. It doesn't matter to me where the student takes the test as long as I know that it's them that took it and their name's on the test and everything. Some schools might go to a neighboring district to take the test if that district's willing to do that. Other students might go to, I know like Bismarck State College here in Bismarck offers the Workkeys test. I believe Bismarck State charges around $50, something like that. Schools, if you want to offer the Workkeys within your school, there's a licensing. You have to get a site license, and I believe the cost from there is $35, $40, something like that. And so if a student's going to take the Workkeys exam, the highest you can get on the Workkeys is going to be a 7. And a student has to get at least 5 or higher on each of the 3 assessments. There's applied math, graphic literacy, and workplace documents. If a student gets 5 or higher on all 3 of those tests, then they meet the requirement, the testing requirement for the career and tech ed scholarship. If a student passes 2 of them and then doesn't pass the 3rd one, they can retake that 3rd one. As long as they get a score of 5 or higher, then that would qualify. Now the question's been asked to me before too, how many times are you allowed to take these tests? As far as I'm concerned, take them as many times as you're able to, and we will take the highest score. I want to address something here. Workkeys is a joke test. The Workkeys is not a joke test. Okay, the Workkeys, it's different than the ACT. The ACT test is more of an academic college prep type test. The Workkeys is more of a hands-on work-oriented test. Okay, so it's a different kind of test. But the ACT or the Workkeys test, it is not a joke test. Okay, it is a test that will test the student's skills, kind of more in a hands-on type situation, a little more career-oriented than the ACT might be. So again, for the CTE scholarship, you either need to have a 24 on the ACT or a 5 or higher on each of the 3 Workkeys assessments. All testing has to take place before the student graduates from high school. Now last year, due to a governor's executive order, there was an extension allowed because right around the time when a lot of students would have started taking the Workkeys test, that was when COVID hit and schools got shut down. And so we ended up extending for last year's seniors. We extended the deadline through August. Okay, that will not happen this year because now we know the situation we're in. It's obviously not an ideal situation, but everybody has enough notice, and so you do need to make sure you get those tests done. Jessica, I believe you're right. Yeah, I do think it's up to 12. It's up to 12 times that you can take it. One question I've been asked about the ACT is, what if I take the ACT and I get a 24, but I retake it and I get a 22? Do you go by my most recent or you go by the highest? We go by the highest score. So there is no downside to trying to retake the test. Let's see here. A couple questions here. Melissa has a question. Are you aware of any prep course? There are prep materials available. If you email me, I will put you in contact with Bonnie Weiss from our assessment office, and we will get that out to you. Jane says, my kid said the Workkeys was easier. You know, for some students, maybe it is. Okay. Shelly says, thank you for the factual information. Shelly and I used to work together, by the way, so I'm very glad to see her on here. Kind of hard to believe that her kids are old enough to start doing the scholarship here now. They were pretty little when I worked with Shelly. But anyways, that's another story there. So let's see. Okay, so once again, with the testing, make sure you get that done before graduating from high school. Okay. A few other things with the Workkeys exam is that visit with your school counselor, find out where the test is offered, if it's offered at your school, and then if you do end up passing the Workkeys exam, you need to make sure that you send the test score in to our office. Now, you don't need to do that for the ACT. Our system is able to upload, if you attend public school, our system through PowerSchool is able to upload ACT scores, and we're able to get your scores that way. But if you take the Workkeys exam, then you need to send the scores in, because we don't have an automated way to get that. So just a little bit about that. And by the way, if a student applies for the scholarship and the only thing we're missing is their Workkeys scores, the student does have to have taken the test prior to graduating. But if the only thing we're missing is the physical paper copy of the Workkeys, we'll call the school, we'll call the student, we'll make sure that if you did indeed take the test, that you have a chance to send that paperwork in. Okay? Amy asked a question, once you've chosen the CTE for a year, if you qualify for both. Nope. Like I say, it's you can only get one or the other. And really a more accurate way of stating this is it's two different ways to qualify for the same scholarship. So, no, you're not able to get the CTE scholarship and use that for 4 years or even 1 year and then switch over to the academic. They're both $6,000. They can both be used for 6 years after high school. If a student is able to qualify for both, that's great, but they'll end up having to, they can pick one or the other. If they qualify for both, it doesn't really matter which one they select, because they're going to get one or the other. So, Amy, thank you for that question. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through the coursework that's required for each scholarship. So if there's any seniors or parents of seniors that are on the line here, if you happen to hear of anything, any particular courses that are not, or that you haven't taken yet or are not signed up to take, you need to make sure that that you visit with your principal, visit with your counselor, and try to get that on your schedule for second semester. Because once again, all coursework has to be completed before you graduate from high school. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about. Hey, Greg asked a very good question. If the student took the ACT at a Minnesota private school, does the ACT? Yes. In fact, if the student takes the ACT at any non-public school, then yes, you will need to send your scores into the office here. Okay. Thank you for asking that question, Greg. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about courses that are required for both scholarships. And so we'll start by talking about classes that are required for both of them. Then we'll branch off and talk about the academic and the CTE scholarships. So the first requirement is you have to have 4 credits of English. That's the exact same as the graduation requirement, so usually that one's not much of an issue. Students also have to have 3 credits of science. That is also the exact same as the graduation requirement. They have to have biology, have to have physical science. There is one way that they can go without taking physical science, and that's if they've taken both chemistry and physics. So that's kind of an outlier situation, but generally speaking, students have to have both biology and physics to qualify for the state scholarship. They have to have 3 credits of social studies, meaning they have to have their U.S. history, and then they have to have either a full year of problems of democracy or a semester of government and a semester of economics. They have to have their 1 credit of combined physical education and health. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start talking about, we're going to branch off a little bit. First, I'm going to talk about the math requirement. The math requirement, this is going to be the first requirement that is considered above and beyond the requirements for graduation. So for the academic scholarship, students have to have 1 credit of Algebra 2. They have to have 1 credit of any math that Algebra 2 is a prerequisite for. So it could be trigonometry, it could be college algebra, it could be advanced statistics, it could be pre-calc, something like that. Question I get asked a lot is, what if my son or daughter takes a semester of college algebra, which a lot of kids do. They'll take that semester of college algebra. Can they combine that semester of college algebra with another advanced math like trig or pre-calc? Absolutely, they can do that. Okay, so it has to equal 1 full credit above and beyond Algebra 2. And we have a list of those courses on our website. And if you have any questions about which courses might qualify, let me know. Or let me know and I'll help you out. And then for the third math for the academic, it could be any additional information or any additional math credit. Now for the Career Tech Ed Scholarship, they have to have 1 credit of Algebra 2 and then any other 2 math credits. So the common denominator here is they do have to have Algebra 2. All right. For the CTE scholarship, it's 3 maths, including Algebra 2. For the academic, it's 3 maths, including Algebra 2, and at least 1 credit above and beyond Algebra 2. Something Algebra 2 is considered a prerequisite for. For the CTE scholarship, students have to have 4 credits of career and technical education courses. And this is where I'm going to get into in a little more detail, answering the question regarding what counts as a CTE class. So for the career and tech ed scholarship, students have to have 4 credits of career and tech ed. 2 of those 4 credits have to be from the same coordinated plan of study. This is a coordinated plan of study chart that's put out by the North Dakota Department of Career and Technical Education, who we work very closely with. And we've got 8 different content areas here. We've got agriculture. I'll just page through this really quick. Business, family consumer science, health sciences or health careers, information technology, marketing, tech and engineering, trade and industry. All of those content areas are considered career and technical education courses. So a student needs 4 credits in career and technical education, and 2 of those 4 credits has to be in the same column anywhere on this chart. This chart is about 8 pages long, and as long as they have 2 credits in any one column on that chart, and that chart's on our website. If you have trouble finding it, just email me and I'll help you get a hold of that. For the CTE scholarship, they have to have the 4 credits of CTE with 2 credits in the same column anywhere. All right? One thing I'm going to say is that this particular plan of study here is the #1 reason why a student who thinks that they qualify ends up not qualifying. It's because they either don't have the correct career and tech ed classes, or they don't have 2 credits in the same coordinated plan. Joy asked a question here. If my child asks for this information at school, the school should be able to provide it to them, because we put this information out to the schools, out to the school counselors in particular, multiple times per year. I present at both administrator and counseling conferences. So it's a situation where if they maybe don't know the answer off the top of their head, they should be able to refer them to where the student can find the information. Now, if you end up in a situation where the student asks the counselor or the principal for the information and they don't have it, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to provide you the information. Also, with the CTE classes, make sure that your students know whether or not the classes are CTE. For example, music classes do not count as CTE, art classes don't count as CTE, PE doesn't count as CTE, and neither does foreign language. Okay, so the career and tech ed classes, like we had said earlier, are the classes from that chart that I referenced. So it would be your ag classes, your business classes, trade and industry, that type of thing. All right. Now let's talk about the academic scholarship. There's a few things students need to do for the academic scholarship. When the scholarship first came out, the scholarship's been around since 2009 was when the legislature passed it. The first seniors to get it were 2010. When the scholarship first came out, the academic scholarship did require you to have 2 years of foreign language. In 2013, they revised that to say that you need either 2 years of the same foreign language or 2 credits of career and technical education in the same column or coordinated plan like we talked about for the CTE scholarship. So they have to do one or the other. And then they also have to have at least 1 upper level class. They have to have at least 1 half credit of a dual credit class. Dual credit means that they receive both high school and college credit. Or they can take a full credit, a full year of an advanced placement course with the AP exam. So in other words, they have to do the full credit of the class and they have to take the AP exam. They don't necessarily have to pass the AP exam, but they do have to take the AP exam. Okay? A third option here is that a student can take what's called early entry college classes. The difference between early entry and dual credit, early entry means they're receiving college credit only. This option usually isn't used very often. Most students, if they take a college level course, are going to do a dual credit through their school so they can get high school and college credit. But if there's a situation that arises that for whatever reason they're not able to get high school credit, if they enroll as an early entry student and get 1 full high school credit, which would be the equivalent of 6 college semester credits, then they're allowed to do that as well. And then one other requirement is that students have to have one additional credit, above and beyond what we've talked about, one additional credit of CTE or foreign language or fine arts. That is a requirement that is very easy to overlook sometimes, so make sure that you're aware of that. Fine arts classes would be things like music or art, that type of thing. I want to talk very briefly, and then one other thing here, they just have to complete elective classes then to get up to a total of 22 credits. I want to talk very briefly about what's called the Educator Pathway courses. Now, not very many schools offer these, but there is a way that students can get the, okay. Robert asks a question here. Hi, Jim. Does a EL student have to take 2 years of foreign language since they already speak a foreign language? Okay, they don't have to take 2 years of foreign language, but they either have to take, for the academic scholarship, they either have to take the 2 years of foreign language or they have to take 2 credits of career and tech ed in the same coordinated plan of studies. So to answer your question, Rob, yes, they do have to do one or the other. So with the Educator Pathway classes, what these classes are classes that are geared towards students who are training while in high school. They have an interest in becoming a teacher. And again, only a few schools offer these, so this might not affect very many people that are on the call tonight, but I did want to address it just in case it is offered at your school. So starting with the class of 2020, which would be last year's seniors, students can use an educational pathway, and they can substitute that for either the 2 years of foreign language or the 2 credits of CTE in the same coordinated plan of study. And what the educational pathway consists of is 1 credit in what's called teaching profession, 1 credit in educational methodology, and then 1 additional credit in either AP psychology, dual credit psychology, child development, peer-to-peer leadership, or child-related careers. That was just put into the law just this last legislative session, or 2 years ago, the session that got over in 2019. And so the class of 2020 was the first class to benefit from that. So again, if you happen to attend a school that has these Educator Pathway courses, and if you're wondering if your son or daughter might qualify that way, let me know and I'll be happy to take a look at that for you. One thing to keep in mind is that the Educator Pathway classes cannot be used as CTE classes, like for that extra career and tech ed credit. They can't use an Educator Pathway class to account for that unless it's taught by a family consumer science teacher using a family consumer science course code. So that's kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. So again, I guess what I'm going to recommend is that if you're in a school that offers those classes, reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you out a little bit further with exactly how that works. A few other things here, and again, I appreciate the questions. I'm glad everybody's asking questions here and getting the information that they want. When students are deciding on classes, especially when they're younger, when they're in 9th and 10th grade, I recommend that a student try to get classes from both that could get them on pace for both the academic and the CTE scholarship, at least for that 9th and 10th grade year, until they kind of have a little bit better idea of where they're kind of sitting. Penny asked if I'll repeat the 3 Educator Pathway courses. I will do that. Yep, I'll be happy to. I'll do that in just a second here. So what happens sometimes is a student might limit themselves. Let's say a student doesn't take any career and tech ed classes while they're in 9th and 10th grade or even in 11th grade. If they take the ACT their junior year and they don't get the 24, let's say they don't even come close, now their only option is to take the Workkeys. But if they're entering their senior year and have taken no CTE classes, they have to get 4 CTE classes, and they're taking senior English, and they're taking senior, they're taking their, the government or their POD, and they might be taking another math class too. So I always recommend trying to get some CTE classes in when you're younger, just in case the 24 on the ACT maybe doesn't work out for you. So yeah, once again, the education pathway classes are teaching profession. In fact, I will type that into the chat here if I can spell it right. So teaching profession, educational methodology, So those are kind of those are the two main courses, and then the third course is going to be a choice between 5 different courses. It's going to be AP Psychology, Dual Credit Psychology, Child Development, Peer-to-Peer Leadership, and Child-Related Careers. So I hope that answered your question, Penny. If it didn't, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send that back out to you. Okay. So if students want to know if they're interested in, or if they're on pace for the scholarship, I always recommend visit with either your principal or your school counselor first. For parents that attend public school, for parents whose kids attend public school and you have access to PowerSchool, there is a way to connect to what's called e-transcript right through your PowerSchool. Basically what you do is you log into your PowerSchool. There's an application icon up in the upper right-hand corner with a little arrow in it. You click on that and click on the North Dakota Educational Portal and select your student. If you have more than one kid, you'll have to select which student you're interested in seeing the e-transcript for, and select North Dakota scholarships, and then you'll be able to see a nice chart of how your son or daughter is doing related to the scholarship. So that's another option, is that you can log into e-transcript right from your PowerSchool. And another option here is that I mentioned e-transcript. Obviously, you have access to look at your own son or daughter through e-transcript. I'm able, as the state coordinator, to look up any student. If you're interested in you want me to see how your son or daughter is doing, I'm happy to go ahead and take a look for you. So you can certainly give me a call, send me an email, and I will be happy to take a look at how your son or daughter is doing. I always say the earlier in the school year, the better, because obviously right now we're still in first semester. So especially if your son or daughter is a senior and they need to, get some additional classes, they can go ahead and do that. So if you have any specific questions about how your son or daughter is doing, send me an email, give me a call, and I'd be happy to look them up really quick and let you know if they're on pace for the scholarship or not. And again, my email address is in the comment section there, jimupgren@nd.gov. I'm going to type in my office phone number again, 701-328-2244. So definitely give me a call, and I'd be happy to help you out with that. Now, seniors and parents of seniors, you'll want to pay attention to this part here, how to apply. The application window is going to open up on Monday, January 4th, and we will close applications on Friday, June 4th. We don't start reviewing any scholarship applications until after that June 4th deadline. One question that I get sometimes is, I need classes, I need this class that I'm taking during second semester to qualify for the scholarship, but is it still okay if I fill out my application before the school year is over? Absolutely. The earlier you can get your application done, the better. We don't take a look at the applications at all until after the school year is over, so there's no harm in applying early or later, as long as you get it in before the deadline. I would recommend get it in right away, and then that way you have it taken care of. Now, when you do apply, a couple things. Make sure that you click submit, and then also, if you don't get a confirmation email within, I'm going to say 24 hours of filling out the application, then contact me right away so I can take a look and see what's kind of going on there. So, and then by June 30th, all students in the state that have applied for the scholarship will find out officially whether or not they've met the qualifications or not. So thank you very much for all the questions tonight. I think I've answered all the questions. I hope I have. If I have not answered, if it was a question in the chat that I happened to miss, please type it in again, and I'm happy to answer that for you. And like I said, I will stay on the line tonight until all of the questions have been answered. So if there are no other questions, I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight. It's been great to have you. And again, if you have questions along the way at all, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help out. If there's any other further questions tonight related to the state scholarship, we'd be happy to help you out. Have a great night, everybody.
You want to make sure you save it'll prompt you to save the video, and you
Okay.
want to make sure you do that.
So after I do end live video?